Okay, welcome everyone. My name is Ankur. Yeah, go ahead, Kalyanji. We'll hand it off to President of Hindu University of America, Kalyan Vishwanathan, who is going to lead this webinar.
Okay, very good. Great. Thank you all. Thank you all for joining. I would like to begin with a question. Where are you joining from? In other words, which city are you in? Kindly, type into your chat window if you don't mind. Moore Park, California. Okay. Fremont. All right. Mumbai. Gold. Okay. LA, Chicago, Saratoga, Uttara, India. Wow. Okay. All right, great. Now, let me ask you another question. Have you already taken the Orientation to Hindu Studies course? It's a yes or no question, okay? Have you already taken the Orientation to Hindu Studies course? Okay, Dimple is saying yes, no, 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 yes, okay, no, good. Right. All right. Next student, okay. Okay, so there are lots of interesting answers. Okay, good. All right, good. So today's webinar is titled Orientation to Hindu Studies, and our we're going to look at this course primarily today called Orientation to Hindu Studies. So we offer a course called Orientation to Hindu Studies. That's a 1 credit hour course. It runs an entire quarter. It's got about 11 sessions approximately, and the duration of each session is about 90 minutes. And it's a course that we've been running now for about 5 quarters now, and the fall quarter probably the 5th quarter. We've done it 4 times. This will be the 5th time we are running the course. So I want to take you through a few slides first. And then, I want to kind of interact with all of you via the chat window. Okay, so I would like this to be, since the number is very small, Ankur, I'm just wondering, maybe we can elevate everybody to a panelist and then...
that sounds like a good idea.
Okay, why don't you do that?
That's okay with you? I will do that right now.
While I get going on the webinar, okay?
Yeah.
On the slides.
So if you have your video showing, you will be it will be visible. So just give you a heads up. Or you can turn your video off so you won't. But
right.
Please do. We like to see your faces.
All right. So let me share my screen and go to the PowerPoint. Okay, here we are. So this is the Orientation to Hindu Studies webinar, and the intention of this webinar is to give you a sense of the course itself, okay, and what it entails and what will it lead to. What kind of a portal is it? Portal in the sense, you're entering a new world called Hindu Studies, and the orientation to Hindu Studies is a kind of a bird's eye view of the whole, the layout, the geography of the Hindu Studies domain as we have constructed it in the Hindu University of America. Now, I want to begin with a few cosmic mysteries. Okay, this is where I'd like to begin. A few cosmic mysteries for us to ponder. And these are timeless mysteries, timeless in the sense every generation asks these questions to a lesser or greater extent. And it seems like many cultures have answered these questions in their own ways, or at least proposed answers to these questions. For example, Who created this universe? That is an interesting question in its framing, right?
Have you?
It could have been framed as, how did this universe come into being? Did it happen by accident? You know, did it happen naturally through some process? What was that process? Who created that process? How did that process come into existence? What is the nature of that creator? If there is a creator, we know from our everyday experience that every created object that is accessible to us has a creator behind it. You know, if you drive a car, you know who created the car, who manufactured the car. If we eat chapatis, we know who created the wheat behind it, who were responsible for it coming into being. So by extension, meaning by induction, if we consider this universe to be a created object, there's naturally a question: who created it? What is the nature of that creator? So interestingly, science does not have access to these questions. Very important. Okay, so science has gone as far back in time to say there was a Big Bang. But why was there a Big Bang? What was there before the Big Bang? You know, how come there was a Big Bang? What caused the Big Bang? Science cannot penetrate those mysteries. Okay. Who or what caused the Big Bang? Is time linear or cyclic? Interesting question. It seems to be linear, but so does the Earth. Is the Earth flat or is it spherical? Well, it seems flat, but just because it seems flat, is it flat really? Time seems linear, but is it linear really? Will the universe eventually collapse? How will that happen? Or will it keep on expanding endlessly? Are atoms and molecules intelligent? Or do they possess intelligence? How do they know to get organized into cells and organs and species, etc.? How do they know? Individually, how do they know to get organized into groups, into coherent groups of atoms and molecules? Is there an ordering intelligence behind this universe? Where is that intelligence located, if there is an ordering intelligence? Or is this all an unintelligent phenomenon? That you and I as human beings, we alone possess intelligence, but there is some unintelligent process that is going on through which process all this has come into existence. How does the first instance of a species come into being? We know how species replicate themselves, but how does the very first instance come into being? If species are continuously evolving, in other words, they are mutating, continuously mutating, where are the intermediate forms of those species? Why do we not find the intermediate forms running around all over the world? How does the discreteness of individual species, how is that getting produced? Does consciousness emerge from matter? Or does matter emerge from consciousness? What happens when we die? Or does some part of us survive death? Etc. Now, these are a collection of questions. And what is common to all these questions is that science cannot penetrate these questions. That's a very big assertion, okay? Science cannot penetrate these questions. Why can't it penetrate these questions? Why can't science penetrate these questions? Let me pause here, stop sharing, invite some answers in the chat window, okay? Why can't science penetrate these questions? What do you think? Just shout out your answers in the chat window, please. Go ahead and why can't science penetrate these questions? Nobody's saying anything.
I'm trying to say something.
Okay.
If I can, sorry.
Yes, please. Binaji, go ahead.
As you said, why can't science penetrate these questions? That's a very interesting question, because science has not been able to enter into the sphere where there is total pure consciousness, pure consciousness in the seed form. So although we may say that science has talked about the cell study of the cell and everything, yet there is one particular part which is beyond the atom, and that cannot be reached by the scientific study as of now.
Yeah, so you're kind of in the ballpark. Okay, so the thing is, see, science needs observation for corroboration. Right? So what is scientific? The scientific method, if it cannot observe something, it cannot corroborate anything. It cannot prove, disprove, it cannot negate, it cannot affirm, it cannot confirm. So the whole empirical nature of science, cannot penetrate realms which are inaccessible to the sensory perceptive world. It cannot. So the way science deals with it is it avoids these questions. So you go to a scientist and say, what was there before the Big Bang? Who created the Big Bang? The scientist would most likely say, if he's a humble scientist, he will say, I don't know. We don't know. We don't know. If he's an arrogant scientist, he will say it is an invalid question. It's an invalid question. You should not ask such a question. Okay. So in other words, scientists then carefully limit their domain to the realm of what is observable. Observable as in what is visible, what is accessible to the senses. Okay. So this is one of the ways science limits itself. So let's move on. But that has not stopped human beings from asking these questions. Okay. People keep asking these questions again and again, generation after generation. They ask it when they're young, they ask it when they're old, they ask it all the way in between, they ask it particularly when they are about to die. So people ask this question: what is the meaning of this life? Why are we here? What's our purpose here? What is the meaning of all this? Is there any ordering intelligence behind all this? Now, human knowledge is always partial. Always partial. That's why once upon a time we used to think the earth was flat, and then somebody came and corrected it and said, no, it is not flat at all. It's a sphere. And then they had a big argument. And this is the nature of human knowledge. It is always partial. We advance a theory, a proposition, and then somebody else negates it and corrects it. And then we have a big argument, a big debate. And then people get converted. So you get the, it's a fan religion, and then you get it's a tree religion, and it's a rope religion, and so on. So humanity breaks up into these groups in which we begin subscribing to a particular perspective. So everyone can ascertain some facts and develop a perspective. Okay, but can anyone find the whole truth about anything? Can anyone find the whole truth about anything? Of course, you can pretend. Can anyone ever know everything there is to know in this universe? Can anyone be sure that they know everything? So, when somebody says to you, I know everything, or I know everything about something, we should be very, very careful because we're dealing with some kind of a con artist, if you will, right? Whatever they know ultimately is kind of a partial knowledge. It must be subjected to careful evaluation. Of course, we can always pretend to know. And here is a make up things. Here is a little cartoon that represents the spirit of the times in which we live. Okay, so somehow it has become the human condition, advanced by the world's most powerful country, that you just can make up alternate facts as you go along. Facts don't matter anymore, or do they? If you can establish truth by being loud and aggressive, why do you need to bother with the facts? You can just keep making things up and then accuse the other of making things up. So if everybody is making things up, what is the fact? What is truth really? Now, the study of religion is an established realm of study. For example, when Harvard was founded in 1636 CE, it was a Congregationalist institution and trained ministers for many, many years. It transformed into the Harvard Divinity School in the year 1816. Okay, there's lots of activity in the chat window. Let me take a quick look. Then came Yale University. When Yale College was founded in 1701, it was a college of religious training for Congregationalist ministers. And Yale Divinity School came into existence in 1822. They all exist today, by the way. If you go to Harvard, you can go to the Harvard Divinity School. If you go to Yale, you can go to the Yale Divinity School. And then lastly, the last example is Princeton Theological Seminary. It's founded in 1812. It is a Presbyterian institution. It was created by the Presbyterian Church, called the Princeton Theological Seminary. Now, these are just 3 examples of hundreds and hundreds of religious studies institutions in the United States of America. Now, as most of you are Hindus, I assume, or Indians of Indian origin, you may not be familiar with these institutions. In the recent years, in the recent couple of generations, we have somehow come to believe that the only legitimate fields of study are science, engineering, technology, medicine, accounting, business, finance, etc., etc. Even the arts, the liberal arts, and the humanities holds a kind of a subsidiary place in our consciousness. Religion, the study of religion, has become almost illegitimate within the Hindu world. How do I know that? Why do I assert that? That's because there isn't a single religious studies university, Hindu religious studies university in India. There isn't one. Every university is working very hard to become secular and scientific. So in a manner of speaking, we live in a secular and scientific era, and religion has been relegated into the background. Of course, we have our mutts, we have our ashrams, we have our gurukulams, the Vedic gurukulams, if you will. We have the here and there Sanskrit colleges, which are more focused on language and so on. But the systematic study of Hinduism has not found a place in the contemporary Hindu imagination, as it has in the case of Christianity, for example. Now, you can now compare this to many Islamic schools and colleges, Jewish institutions like the American Jewish University or the Yeshiva University, and on and on. There are many, many of them. Even Buddhist schools are springing up all over the US. There is the Naropa University, and then there is the Soka University, the Institute of Buddhist Studies in Berkeley, and on and on. Okay. So now, very briefly, we have these things called categories, sets, and elements. Okay. So if you create a category called animals, you can see that these are all elements of that set, a set of animals. Okay, it's a classification. Now, if you create a category called birds, some of these will fit into that category, others will not. If you create another category called mammals, some of them will fit into those categories, others will not. Similarly, there is a category that has been created. It has already been created. It's called world religions. There is a category called world religions. Now, who created it and when did it get created? That we will not answer today. We will look at it later. But in this category, supposedly there is an element in this set. There's an element called Hinduism. So this is our contemporary understanding. Hinduism is an element of a set called world religions, which represents a universal category. Now, everybody has a religion, every culture, every society, every civilization has a religion or ought to have a religion. It should have a religion. And Hinduism is one such religion. But if you really think about it for a moment, in terms of this idea of exonyms and endonyms, right? An endonym is the name given by an ethno-linguistic group. An exonym, on the other hand, is a name given by an external ethno-linguistic group to that same thing. Okay, we'll understand what this is through some examples. So exonym and endonym. Okay, so I want to put up a few exonyms here first, and we'll see what the endonyms are. So Germany, the phrase Germany is an exonym. Everybody knows what Germany is. The whole world knows that Germany is a country in Europe, a particular place and location. But if you go to Germany and ask a German, what is the name of your country? The German will not say Germany. He or she will say, I am from Deutschland. Okay, so this is a very interesting phenomenon. Deutschland is the name they call themselves, their country in Deutschland, but everybody else seems to call them Germany. So there's a difference between an exonym and an endonym. An endonym is a name given by a community, a group, an ethno-linguistic group to themselves. Whereas an exonym is a name given to that same group by somebody else, by an external community. You take Persian. Persian, the endonym for Persian is Farsi. So in the world, in the Farsi world, they say we speak Farsi. But everybody else says they speak Persian. If you go to China, they'll say we live in Beijing. But then in the exonym has become Peking. So now the question is, what is the endonym for India? Let me stop here. Give me some answers to the question. What is the endonym for India? Yeah, Bharat. So the person who's saying India has Sanskrit universities which concentrate on Hindu religious studies. You'll be surprised, sir. They focus more on language than the philosophies and so on. Yeah, so Bharat. So the name for India within India, the original language is called Bharat, a derivative of Bharatam or Mahabharatam, from the great epic. Now you have two more words, Hinduism and religion. Both are exonyms. What are the endonyms for these words? What are the endonyms for these words? Somebody is saying Sanatana Dharma, Hindu Dharma. Any other answers? Okay, seems like that's it. Okay, all right. So Vedic Dharma, yeah, Vedic Dharma, that's another one. Vaishnavism, Advaita, Vedanta. Swapnil says speaking should be ended. No, it's the other way around, sir. Yeah, Nitika is saying religion must be translated as Dharma. Really, really, that's one of the great challenges of translations. Yeah. So, you know, the important point here is that we are stuck with exonyms right now. And we need to move towards the endonyms in order to understand those phenomena. Why do we need Hindu studies? Why do we need Hindu studies? Do we need Hindu studies at all? So let me ask this question. I'd like to get some answers. Why do you think we need Hindu studies? Do we need it at all? Do we need Hindu studies at all? Veena ji says yes, but why? The question is why? Why do we need Hindu studies? To explore ourselves, okay? Ourselves. Take back religion from our religion from pseudo scholars, okay? Need a common consensus and definition, what it entails, okay? So many answers to clear confusions, to keep the Vedic tradition ongoing, okay? To understand self-realization, Atmanirbharta. Non-Hindus can understand, okay? To preserve, learn, and pass on to future generations. That's a good answer. Keep us grounded. Establish the truth. Keep Hinduism to survive in the world of forced conversions, etc. Yeah. To understand what is truth and untruth. Okay. So now I'm going to frame this question a little bit more deeper. Okay. See, for the Hindu world, we after all have our family traditions. You know, so I presume we all understand Hinduism osmotically through a process of osmosis from our families, our communities, our traditions. We have our mandirs and rituals. Then we also have gurus and ashrams. These are the institutions we have. In the face of this, why do we need an academic study of Hindu Dharma? Why do we need an academic study of Hindu Dharma? And after all, is that not enough? Is it not enough that we have family traditions, mandirs, rituals, and gurus and ashrams? So why do we need an academic study of Hindu Dharma? For a Hindu foundation of socio-economic, political, and technological frontiers, formal accepted spiritual institutions. There's no systematic way that I can access, and I have tried, okay, to counter propaganda. Interesting for me to show how Hindu studies stands on a par with science, okay, to counteract the negatives being thrust upon us, to take on the Western ideologists who mutilate our texts and traditions. Yeah, so there is a lot here, okay. There is no current common consensus of non-negotiables, rules, foundations that every Hindu must adhere to identify with, be called a Hindu. Most of us know Hinduism even though we never study. Family, mandir, etc. cannot address all aspects. They create a structure for society. Okay? Authentic study. Family traditions differ from place to place. Rituals would contaminate it. So we have structured exposure to actual Hinduism. Okay, good. So, I mean, we're going to try and answer this in a particular way. Okay. So here is a particular way of answering this question. So if you look at what are the different dimensions of knowledge, of what knowledge can generate, in terms of equipping us with skills, new capacities, in terms of an almost transformed way of being in the world. If you're looking for basic knowledge, some understanding of Hindu worship and practice within a particular sampradaya, some spiritual advancement in our lives, right? Family traditions are adequate, mostly. Temples and rituals do the job, mostly. Ashrams and gurus do an even better job, but there is a certain teaching environments there. However, if you want to move beyond that into a deeper personal transformation, you want to enter the realms of therapy and counseling, teaching and research, writing and articulation, participate in the media and public square, become a member of the community from an advocacy and policy perspective, get into debates and dialogue with other contemporary systems of thought, ideologies, religions, and so on. Representation, representing Hinduism, representing Hindu thought in the world. Then defense and contestation, being able to articulately take on an erroneous view and correct it, or defend a view that is misconstrued. Conflict resolution. And within this, you can throw in a lot of other things, such as sustainability, the future of humanity, different things where Hinduism can make a contribution. And lastly, ownership of narrative. If you want to enter into these realms as a self-expression, okay, as a self-expression, meaning you are already a dharmic human being, deeply concerned and committed to the Hindu, way of life, the Hindu paradigm of being in the world. Yeah, you're already committed to that, and you're deeply committed to its proper transmission to the next generation. And if you want to participate in articulating it, defending it, engaging with contemporary thought systems, ideologies, and so on, the academic study of Hinduism is very important. So this is how we are framing this conversation. Okay, so this is really for someone who wants to go beyond just having a basic knowledge, working practice, and some spiritual grounding. They want to move beyond that into a more intense period of engagement with the Hindu world through Hindu studies. That is what we think Hindu studies can enable. Okay, moving on. The next question is, what is the right approach to the study of Hinduism? Give the chat window one brief time. Yeah. What is the right approach? How do you approach this study? We approach it through the realm of philosophy primarily. You study the various philosophies embedded in the world of Hinduism. We approach it through the lens of theology. We approach it through the lens of history, the study of the historical development of Hinduism. Do you look at it as a religion, religious studies? You look at it as through the lens of geopolitics, the conflicts between Hindus and Muslims and Christians and other religious traditions, intra-Hindu, within the Hindu world, conflicts, anthropology, sociology, psychology, philology, just textual studies, and so on. So the question is, what is the right approach? how do we approach it? Well, does anybody have any idea? What is the right approach? A mix of it all, okay? Study of Hinduism is a personal journey, okay? Is it difficult to fix Hinduism syllabus? That's a good question. We're going to discuss that some more. Now, see, before we answer, nobody's answered this question. You know, somebody said mix of it all, and combination of all, okay? So I want to point out something though, which is that all of these words are exonyms to the Hindu world. Exonyms, meaning they do not arise within the Hindu world. You cannot go to the Vedas and find anthropology in it. You cannot go to the Upanishads and find history in it or philosophy in it. You know, because these are words and categories. These categories emerged from a particular culture, a European culture, and therefore these categories themselves carry the contours and distinctions of Western thought. It's embedded in the categories themselves, right? And so when you approach the study of Hinduism through any of these categories, then what are we doing? We're already looking at it from within a Western lens, right? Now, the point is, we live in a westernized world today. You know, our language is Western, our categories of thought have become Western. They're derived from a particular Western experience, which is European, the Enlightenment, you know, the whole Reformation, you know, the age of reason, science and technology, a particular European experience through several centuries, 300-400 years, you know, brought into motion or set into motion categories of knowledge embedded in university environments that got universalized through a particular process of colonization. Yeah. So the universities throughout the world today use these categories, you know, as the most appropriate categories for the study of any phenomenon. Yeah. So this is where we have a challenge. We have a challenge. The challenge is you will not find these words here. What will you find in the Hindu world? If you enter the Hindu world, you'll find a completely different language structure. You will encounter words like darshana, sampradaya, jnana, yoga, dharma, moksha, artha, kama. Yeah, you will encounter sattva, rajas, tamas. You will encounter purusha, prakriti. You will encounter you know, dosha, guna, karma, dharma. You will encounter you know, varieties of terminologies: nirukta, chandas, vedanta, upanishad, veda, bhashya, tika, and on and on. Okay, so you enter into a language structure that is completely different than the language structure which has become commonplace and universalized today, right? Are we then trapped inside a language structure of an alien culture? Yeah, it is a completely different semantic ontological framework altogether. Yeah, it's a completely different ontological framework. Now, you know, when you look at it, when you take something like moksha and you anthropologize it, okay, then you completely distort what it means. You know, if you look at moksha through the lens of history, the question to ask is, when was the idea moksha developed? Who developed it? What was there before that? You know, was it a later addition or was it an original idea? You see? So the questions you ask themselves get shaped by the field of study in which you're located. If you go into the anthropology department, they have a very good idea of what questions to ask, what questions not to ask. Yeah. And in large measure, they also know what answers to give because it's all settled. All you have to do is keep on citing authors before you, and you arrive at some conclusion that seems completely rational and logical and fits the narrative structure that is being developed by that field of knowledge called anthropology or philology or sociology, etc. Okay, this is one of the first difficulties we have to surmount. Now, here's another question, an approach to studying an ancient text. You know, you take a text like the Vedas or the Bhagavad Gita, the Upanishads, etc. You can approach it this way. You can ask a question or a set of questions. You know, what wisdom does the ancient text have for us in our contemporary times? Does the ancient text have anything of value for us in our time, in our lifetimes, right now? How do we extract that which is of contemporary value from that text while disregarding material from within the text which may belong to a long bygone era? You know, so in other words, here you're approaching the text from the standpoint of its relevance, its value, its applicability to our time and era in which we're living. However, you can also approach the same text in a different way. You know, you can ask a different set of questions. What does the ancient text tell us about the way people lived in those days? In those days, meaning in those times, in that historical time. What inferences can we draw about the people, their culture, their priorities, and their interests from the text itself? You can even ask who wrote the text, why did they write it, what social or political advantage were they seeking in writing it, etc. And you see, these two sets of questions are completely different from each other, right? And the answers you give to the questions are inevitably constrained by the questions you ask. You know, if you keep asking a question, who wrote the text, why did they write it, you would not be interested in what wisdom does the ancient text have for us in our contemporary times. So you know, right away you see that there are two seemingly mutually exclusive realms of inquiry, of questions. So the questions that are posed begin to constrain the answers you give, right? And the answers you give begins to build up a narrative taken together. You know, the answers given by many scholars over many decades and decades of research, they add up to a kind of a narrative which begins to appear to be a valid narrative. Now, here is a quotation. I just want to throw it in just for a little bit of a perspective. Now, Swami Vivekananda's perspective was the following. He said, Hinduism means expansion. And expansion means realization. Man is to become divine. That includes woman too. You know, the human is to become divine, realizing the divine more and more from today to day in an endless progress, in building up character, in making for everything that is good and great, in bringing peace to others and peace to one's own self. Religion is the highest motive power and therefore ought to be studied from that standpoint. Interestingly, Swami Vivekananda uses both the terms, Hinduism and religion, in this quotation, they are both exonyms. Take a look at yeah. So in the Hindu world, we have a particular problem, which is the burden of our history. And this chart tries to depict that history in a very brief, visual. The three lines on this graph represent India's share of the world's GDP. That's in blue color. The pink is the USA's share of the world GDP, and the yellow is UK's share of the world GDP. And you can see over a 2,000-year period how this turned out. And the data behind this comes from Professor Angus Madison's phenomenal work called the History of Economics, or History of the World Economy, which he published in the year 2004. Now, what has happened is, there are a couple of events that created this enormous downfall in India, in which Hindus really failed to defend their territories. And as a consequence, most of us were born here, and our only way of knowing our culture is through the experience we've had here in this era and time. So oftentimes what we end up doing is we project our current perceptions, our current experiences onto the entire history of India unknowingly. Nobody is free from doing this. Even historians who appear to be telling objective histories, they are also projecting their own current day sensibilities backwards in time into periods and societies and cultures and civilizations about which they know very little. So they end up judging the societies of the past through the lens of a current day sensibility or a value system. And that judging and assessing ends up distorting their whole narrative. But then, we used to have these universities, very famous universities of the past, and they slowly gave way to the great universities of England at the height of its power. And now, of course, we have the great universities of the West, Harvard, Stanford, Yale, and Columbia, and so on. I've thrown in Jawaharlal Nehru University there because it is playing a major role in shaping the narrative about India in India today, whether we like the narrative or not. Now, one of the problems of this historical development is that Hindus are portrayed in the narrative that has emerged as aggressors and villains. The Hindutva is being demonized, Brahmins are being demonized. And this started a long time ago. This nearly 500 years, 600 years of history in how this narrative got built up. And it creates massive distortion and cognitive dissonance for people who live today in our times. More so for our children, the next generation, even more so for the generation following. And all in all, Hindu community is not in control of its own story and narrative. So for this reason, we have constituted a realm of study. And the purpose of our study would be to explore a variety of questions with rigor, with depth, to learn to articulate and engage with expertise and credibility, and in the process be transformed in some way where our own sense of dharmic living, dharmic life expression can be made more impactful in the societies and cultures in which we find ourselves. Ultimately, it's our aspiration that this kind of study creates clarity and expertise and confidence for our participants, for our students, and inspires them to contribute more substantially to the world. So, just a few quick thoughts about the significance of our lives. Most of our lives are lived inside an extraordinary commitment for security and comfort. And when we have obtained that, of course, the people who have to struggle for that, they keep struggling all their lives for security and comfort. And the people who have a certain measure of security and comfort, they seem to be mostly interested in having a good time, entertaining themselves, indulging in various pleasures and so on. And this is what we call in the Hindu world artha and kama. Artha and kama in the Purushartha terminology. But really, there is a beginning of an awakening. The beginnings of an awakening that happens, that arises for people when they move beyond artha and kama and start inquiring into a different realm of possibilities called dharma and moksha. And what that awakening is okay, what is that awakening? Think about it. It is constituted in terms of an awakened intelligence, an awakened awareness, an understanding of the nature of life, and priority, examines one's own priorities in life. It is at the heart of it, there is a spiritual intuition of some kind that is at work, whether known to us or unbeknownst to us. There is a pursuit of self-knowledge, an interest in self-knowledge, an interest in the question, who am I? What am I here for? What's the purpose of my life? And it seeks to arrive at an integral understanding, an integrated understanding. Integration meaning the realm of the world, the realm of the mind, the realm of the spirit, and to arrive at an integrated appreciation of the whole of our existence. And ultimately, a deep awareness of the great cosmic mystery of life. And the study of Hindu Dharma has really been to be located in the Purusharthas of Dharma and Moksha. If you make the study of Hindu Dharma subsidiary to the pursuits of Artha and Kama, then it will inevitably distort the entire enterprise. What does study of Hindu Dharma entail? Well, it entails inquiry, research, reading texts, investigation, exploration, dialogue with peers and with teachers, reflection, thought. It requires observation, deep meditation sometimes. And what it also requires is the freedom from already knowing. So one of the barriers for learning is the idea, the notion that we already know it, that we already know everything that there is to know. I know it already. And that frequently is a barrier for learning. That if you already know everything, then what is there to learn? Probably nothing. Okay, and it requires a willingness to learn and see newly, to reconsider, to reevaluate in the light of new facts. So it is in this context that we have this Hindu University of America, which we put together here with lots of courses and programs. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this. There is an academic architecture here in play. Right now, the graduate division and the continuing education division are fully functioning. And okay, so where is the, yeah. So let's look at who could take up this study. Okay, so number one, people who are culturally Hindu can definitely benefit. They're looking to develop new skills, new expertise. People who wish to participate in a dharmic, from a dharmic standpoint in the public square, through writing, speaking, teaching. Young people who are curious about life and looking for direction, looking for a sense of who they are and what there is for them to do in this life beyond merely surviving. And of course, culturally non-Hindu people are very much welcome. People who are interested in Hindu thought and culture, who may come from a yoga environment, a new age, a spiritual group type of background. People are engaged in public service, such as teachers, doctors, counselors, therapists, and chaplains, and so on. Academic scholars, want to put together and represent an authentic perspective on Hindu thought. So we have this course structure to 11 weeks. Approximately, we'll be looking at colonialism and its aftermath, some building blocks of Hindu thought. We'll look at various aspects of Hindu studies, take a deep dive into Sanskrit, texts and traditions, post-colonial Hindu studies, history and method, conflict and peace, future directions. So we look at a lot of different topics over this 11-week period. It's a 1 credit hour course. It's about 10, I really should say more than 10. It's about 15 hours because we'll have 30 minutes of discussion in each class, in addition to the 1 hour. And you'll get a complete overview of all the programs, areas of study. We'll go through readings every week, and discussions based on the readings. There'll be some videos to watch. We'll get grounded in a number of Sanskrit phrases and words. Okay, so it's a $300 course for a 1 credit hour course. The next course is beginning on October 8th, which is on Thursday, coming up next week. It'll end on December 17th. Every Thursday, 8 p.m. Central Time, 9 p.m. Eastern Time. 60-minute class followed by 30 minutes of discussion, so that's a total of 90 minutes. And it's a pass and fail type situation. There's no grading really involved. It is a doorway into the world of Hindu studies. Really, you'll get a very good, thorough grounding on all that is available in the landscape that you can pick up as you move forward. So in this course, you'll be able to explore various options and trajectories, distinguish central ideas and concepts that constitute the foundations of Hindu Dharma, inquire into and evaluate different elective areas of study, distinguish between pathways towards a deep study of Hindu thought or towards deep engagement with Western thought from a Hindu perspective. You'll be able to create your own pathway for engagement in the curriculum. Okay, and the course will enable you really to recognize the value, the opportunity of engaging seriously and rigorously with Hindu Dharma. And as you develop as a scholar, as an academic, or as an activist or a professional, you will find that there are different spaces in which you can fruitfully participate and contribute in the future. Okay, so this is the presentation part. Now we are going to move into a Q&A component, right? So we will look at some questions. Okay. So I'd like to answer questions, and I think you can unmute yourself and ask a question. Please, one thing I would request you, please kindly do not go off into a tangent and deliver a talk now. Try to keep the conversation focused on the course itself, because we want to invite all of you to join this course, register for this course. It's a terrific way of beginning your engagement with the university. And there are so many wonderful courses available on the other side, but this is the place where you start. Okay, with that, let me hear some questions from...
Maybe we could get Dimpleji to say a few words as a student who's taken the course, or do you want to take questions first?
Sure, we can start there. Okay, Dimple, why don't you provide a perspective on your experience of the course? Okay.
Namaste, everyone. In the beginning, Kalyaji, before you joined us, I was just telling Ankurji and the few participants who were there that for me, it was a very thoroughly enriching experience because certain things that I perhaps knew by observation or through lived experience or intuitively, the academic discipline and rigor that OTHS, the Orientation to Hindu Studies course, provided to me was invaluable. And the kind of the presentations that are, the class has a great instruction material. So every class has a presentation, and what you saw here is just a sample of that. And I'm sure the kind of thoughts that those few slides would have aroused in your mind, imagine what it would be like in a 90 minutes class for 11 weeks. and there you have other like-minded people. Some are not like-minded, and therefore the discussions that come up are really, really enriching and thought-provoking. The texts that they provide for us to read, I mean, Kalyanji did mention that, you know, you have to read stuff. So there are extracts, chapter extracts, there are articles that have curated. So the kind of curriculum that has been created even for this orientation program is really amazing, because it also, Kalyanji talked about self-study. It triggers that path too. So for me personally, I did come here, probably if you look at the pyramid that Kalyanji showed, I might say that I am into the third level, aspiring for the fourth. So when I came here, I did come with an open mind, but I wasn't expecting to be so surprised pleasantly, because here was something uh, that was channelizing my energy in a disciplined, academic, scholarly manner, and equipping me with the knowledge and wherewithal to engage with the external world in a more informed manner. So it's like moving from the outrage, angst, polemic to more nuanced, profoundly grounded view of the insider. I also realized that yes, there were certain instances wherein I was looking at myself and our milieu from the eyes of the external narrators. And so it will take time, as Kalyani said, that you have to have an open mind. I've actually enrolled for another program now in Sanskrit, and hopefully I'll be pursuing that too. So I really found it totally worth my time, if I can say so. And I recently exhorted people saying that I believe that every Hindu should at least take the OTHS course, because then what happens next will actually set you on your own journey of transformation. So thank you.
Great. Thank you, Dimpleji. That was perfect.
Thank you.
So if you have questions, please use the Q&A box, or raise your hand and you can unmute yourself. But again, as Kalyanji said, let's just make sure we focus on the topic at hand and ask our good questions. I don't see any hands up. Nobody's typed anything in the chat yet. Floor is open for questions and thoughts about orientation to Hindu studies. So Anji?
If nobody's asking a question, then I'll start asking questions of them, which is usually what I do. So let me pose a question, okay? Since none of you seem to have a question. Here is a question in the chat window. And I will type it in and then I'll speak it, okay? So the question is, are you interested in engaging with Hindu studies? That's the question. I think the answer is yes, because you are here in this webinar. Otherwise, you'll be watching TV or doing something else, okay? I'm going to presume that you're interested, okay? So this is good. Good to hear. Now, you could say, I'm not sure. I'm just checking it out. I'm shopping. I'm just kind of doing some window shopping. Timings may not suit you. Well, timings will suit you. It's you got to get up at 6:30 in the morning. That's all.
I have a question.
Yes.
The classes are on every Thursday, right?
That's
so
correct.
If you miss any of them, so what is the way to compensate? So can we have an alternate class or?
No. So what we'll do is we will be recording every session, okay? And within the learning management system, there'll be a place where all the classes are, recordings are set up in a playlist. So you'll be able to catch up in your own time of any sessions that you miss.
Okay, thanks.
Welcome. Any other questions, anybody?
Again, the cost is $300 for a 1-unit course, which is actually very reasonable at the low end compared to other universities. We understand that maybe for non-US folks, it can be costly, but that's just where it's set now.
I will answer the question differently. Okay. See, many people who asked this question, why is it so expensive? After they finished the course, they came back and asked me, why is it so cheap?
I agree. I fully second that.
So it's kind of a interesting conundrum. How many attendees attended prior? Well, we had, the last session had like 80 odd participants. One before that had like 60 something participants. We like to have at least 50 per session. So
what is the typical size for the class?
Yeah, I mean, about 50, let us say 50 is about a normal class.
Natarajanji, Kalyanji, I would like to answer Natarajanji's question. Natarajanji,
Okay.
Once you enroll in this program, you will get to see that there are various pathways that Kalyanji mentioned. So there is a program on texts and traditions. So perhaps once you undergo the complete OTHS course, you will get a better understanding of what you would want to pursue, because even within text and traditions, there are various ways. So you might actually get into Mahabharata studies or more. So I would recommend, because I've seen your conversation throughout in the chat box. I think you might want to enroll in this program for sure. Your interest level and your inclination is like the engagement that you have displayed. I think you should register for sure.
So just to clean up the terminology, right? So this is a course. The orientation to Hindu studies is a course. It's one course. Now, a program may consist of many courses. A program of study. Okay. So we will deal with programs later on. Yeah. Is there a path created for those who want to pursue academic careers? Yeah. See, but this is the entry. This is a mandatory course for the academic track as well. So the best place to enter is the orientation to Hindu studies. Now, what you will get is a kind of a, you'll get to see the whole menu, the whole table, so to speak, all the different areas of specializations, all the different tracks you can take, paths you can take through the curriculum, etc.
I just like to emphasize that in the course, and Dimpleji mentioned it, you have so many different perspectives. And just like right now, seeing different Hindus from across the world, it's encouraging. It gives me energy and it continues me on this path. And on all those fronts, it's amazing, but just on a weekly basis, seeing and connecting with people, even by this medium online, it's inspiring. I was inspired. Other people have been inspired. And I think that's one of those things, regardless of the academics, which is important. Kalyanji just did a whole hour-long presentation, but you have a feel-good hour. It feels good at the end of it, and you can engage with all sorts of people. So that's one of my other kind of emotional pitches in this academic framework.
So will Sanskrit quotations be included? Yeah, in some of the sessions, yes, definitely.
I saw Kiranji was raising their hand. Unmute. Go ahead.
Kiran Sharma, yeah, go ahead, please.
Yes, I took this class, and Kalyanji, you are the greatest speaker. I enjoyed it very much. It was very literary, and also it's very informative. My only problem is I don't know how many people are in that class of my age, and I feel I have a problem to write essays. And I wish if I can take this higher academic classes, which I don't have to write the papers. I'm not looking for credit, but I do want to take these classes, which may not be possible at the auditorial level, audit the class. And I do not know if that can be possible or not. That's why I took the yoga class instead of taking any other class.
Right.
So that was my only question. But sure. I recommend this class for every young adult, every middle-aged person. This is eye-opening area. And I recommend the Hindu University very highly to educate all the Hindus so they can stand up to all these people who are distorting all the information about Hinduism.
Yeah. Very good. Thank you for that endorsement.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Namaste. Let's take a few more questions.
Can I also say a few words?
Yeah, please, Vinitaji, go ahead.
I also completed the orientation in Hindu studies with Kalyanji just 2 weeks ago. And it inspired me to such an extent that not only did I register for the contributions of Hinduism to the material aspect, but also to the introduction to Sanskrit. Since I've got some background of Sanskrit, I felt I should still start from level 1. I got the level 1 books, but I said, oh my God, this is really basic. So I went ahead and registered for 1 and 2. And so I will be busy Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday.
Right. That's a risk of getting too inspired, I think.
But it was your program and my God, the caliber of the professors and the ones who have given us presentations, the depth of study that you all have put in to make such a university possible. It's unbelievable. And we really all have to be thankful to you to creating this forum and space for us to now explore. And hopefully we will continue to bring out the extent and depth of what Bharat has and was to the whole world, because the truth has to come out.
Yeah.
I know we have an uphill task, but we all will put in our 2 cents and stay on this path. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Any other questions about the course itself that we can answer before we? Yeah. Janaki Ji wants to say something. Yeah, go ahead, please.
Will I say a few words?
Yeah, please, go ahead.
Yeah. I had been the first batch of this course, and my age is 77. I have not been able to understand anything about our own Hinduism and our own Indian, these things. What we had been told by our parents and our grandparents, we were continuing with that. After coming to this course and taking this course, I could understand what depth it has got, what all we have left out so far. My age is gone already. I'm already 1 foot in the grave, but still, I loved this course, and it will go for 2-3 more courses. I took Antaranga Yoga and also Mandapam, Yoga Mandapam I've taken, and this is a greatest platform and greatest attempt of this Hindu University to bring to the world how deep, how one vast is into knowledge. They are all thinking that we are nothing but impoverished. Not at all. We are rich in everybody should come into this university and learn what is our ancestors had given for us. We have to learn. I think that is my recommendation for each and everybody. Much for this opportunity.
Thank you. All right. Any other questions about the course itself? No question is like not a good question. Okay. Any question? Vaibhav Sundareshan is saying something. Let me see what it is. Is there an entrance exam qualification test you can write for a fee waiver scholarship? Not earning right now. Would really like to do this course. Okay. All right. Vaibhav, write to us separately on a contact group. Okay. Just send in the contact group how he can connect with us.
Also, those of you who have attended today's webinar, perhaps you could recommend the program or just talk about HUA and its programs with folks who you think are interested in Hindu studies or who you feel are inclined towards it, because that's also a sort of a support and contribution that you can make towards, this particular effort.
All right. if there are no further questions, I would like to end the webinar by thanking all of you for participating, and hopefully we will we'll see you in a course here very soon. If you can make it to the orientation course, it's starting on October 8th. That'll be great. You can get started right away. I personally invite all of you to come on board and get into the course. Okay, that's the best way to get started. And who knows what will open up on the other side of the course. With that, thank you all. Thank you very much. And have a great weekend, everybody. Namaste. Bye-bye.
Namaste.
Namaste. Bye-bye.